Hey, my friend, and welcome to Aligned to Rise, the podcast for ambitious women who are ready to rise above their symptoms, release old limitations, and fully rise into their true power and potential. I'm your host, Alyssa Chavez, functional nutritionist, performance coach, and former endo and infertility warrior who knows what it's like to feel held back by your body and your beliefs. I've taken a journey of true healing from the inside out so that I can show up feeling great in my body, confident and unstoppable. And now I'm here to help you do the same. Through a blend of functional nutrition and deep mindset work, this show will empower you to reclaim your vitality, trust your intuition, and live unapologetically in your purpose. If you're ready to align your body, mind, and spirit so you can rise to your highest potential, you're in the right place. Let's rise, my friend. This show was created for educational purposes only and should not be used as a replacement for medical advice or treatment. Hey, my friend, and welcome back to the podcast. So I'm excited to announce today's special guest because she's actually a dear friend of mine and also a fellow functional nutritionist. She's doing some great work out there. And I've actually had Molly Sellers is our guest. I've actually had Molly on the podcast before, and at the time, we were really talking about her personal experience with endo, and she actually was diagnosed a little later in life, not until she was in her 40s, which is not uncommon, honestly, these days, but she was sharing her experience of being diagnosed and having surgery and all of the things supporting her body. So interestingly, when her and I first connected, which was several years ago now, she ended up becoming a one-on-one client of mine. We worked together to help to support her, and she actually, interestingly, ended up being diagnosed with endo during our time working together. So she'd come to me because she had some digestive and hormone-related stuff going on and just felt like that was something I could really help with. I told her, absolutely, that's right in my wheelhouse. And so we started working together. And as we were talking, started to realize that so many of her symptoms kind of seemed to line right up with endo. And so she ended up getting a consultation with a doctor and ended up going in and having endo surgery. This was all during the time that we were working together, which was so interesting. And she had quite the healing journey along the way, which I know she's going to share with you here. But alongside that, or in the time to come after that, she ended up starting to go into the phase of life where she's in perimenopause. And that involves a whole lot of shifts and changes. If you're not as familiar with that term, it's the years leading up to menopause. And it's often called second puberty because there's so many hormonal shifts and changes that happen. It can feel in many ways very similar to the puberty you go through as a young teen or teenager. And she has learned so much through her own personal journey, as well as working with her own clients through functional nutrition, that she really has ended up starting to specialize in the area of perimenopause, which I think is fantastic. And I know that it's a phase of life that some of my listeners are starting to go through as well. It can honestly start even as early as mid-30s, but more often starting in your early to mid to even late 40s, leading up to menopause. And that's really been the area that she has been focusing on in her practice. And I know that she has so much to share about that phase of life and also how perimenopause has affected and changed her endo journey. She's learned so much along the way. And so I wanted her to come back on the podcast and just share everything she's learned during that time. I know that you're going to love, love, love hearing all of this as much as I have, especially if you are about to or are currently in that phase of life as well. And just hearing how perimenopause can really affect endo, I think is so important to hear, and vice versa. So I am going to let Molly take it away, and I hope you enjoy. All right. Well, hi, Molly. I am so excited to have you back on the podcast today. It's been a little while. I was trying to look back and see how long ago the first episode that we recorded together was, and it's been a little while. So definitely excited to have you back on the podcast here. I know you've done a lot since then, and I would love for you to just share everything that you have learned along the way when it comes to perimenopause and endo and how all of that connects. So, thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me back. I hate that there was such a long gap, but a lot has happened in your life and mine.
True.
Understandable. But I am super excited to be here today and chat about all the things. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for listeners out there who may not be familiar with you, I just found the episode number, so I'll drop this in the show notes as well. But it was episode number 54, which came out, let's see, September of 2024.
Wow.
Was the last time we recorded together. So I'll definitely link that one in the show notes if anyone wants to hear kind of the whole story and journey that led Molly to where she is today. But I would love if you can just introduce yourself, share a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you came to be doing what you're doing. I know we all love to hear how this all started for you.
Well, I think like most people that end up in the functional health realm, we usually have something that happens in our own personal life first. And I had a lot of chronic health issues compiled over many, many years, and no one could ever give me an answer. No one could explain the why behind it. I kept getting quick fixes or, do this, but no one could tell me why. And that gets really old and really frustrating. And so I took it upon myself to really start digging deep and finding that root cause approach that we talk about so much as to why I kept having all these major health issues. Two of those major health issues were two miscarriages that I had kind of back to back within a 2 year period. And that really kind of pushed the needle for me because I kept getting dismissed with that. I kept wanting to know why I kept having these, and no one, doctors could not tell me why. They could just kept brushing me off. So I took it upon myself to start seeking all the answers. I tried all the things. I spent all the money. I Googled everything. And finally, what I realized was approaching everything from a root cause functional approach. I was able to start healing myself little by little through food, through lifestyle. And that worked for many, many years. And then I had a lot of personal stuff happen in my life and I became really stressed out. One of those things being starting my own functional nutrition business. And um, things just kind of spiraled and my health really took a nosedive again. And that is where I actually started seeking out more answers again. And lo and behold, come to find out that I had stage 4 endometriosis, which actually connected so many dots to so many things, to the miscarriages, to infertility, to even the way I was feeling, like anxiety, depression. It was so many things where finally, yes, I had this diagnosis, but I also had answers, which was kind of a bit of a relief. So that was in 2024. So we talked not long after that diagnosis and my full excision surgery, which was very successful. And again, through that functional nutrition approach and holistic kind of lifestyle mindset, I feel great. I've been managing symptoms and feeling the best I've ever felt in my life. But then there was another little road hump, and that was perimenopause, which I knew I was getting close to, but no one really talks about perimenopause. And I had learned, I felt like all the things about endometriosis and hormones and how to manage that. And then now here was this other layer of, well, now perimenopause. What the heck do I do with this? And no one is talking about it. I don't I don't know what to do. And in my functional nutrition practice, I was mainly helping women with any type of hormone issue. And I kept seeing the same things over and over again. And what I really kind of fine-tuned that more to was women in perimenopause, because as I was feeling myself, no one was talking about this. You have your period, you may or may not have kids, and then everyone talks about menopause. No one was talking about this kind of in between stage. And the things that we do in our 20s and 30s can set us up for how we manage perimenopause and menopause. So, going through that myself, I really, probably in the last year and a half, have become really passionate about helping women really kind of find the calm in the true craziness that is perimenopause. And that's really become my focus in my business, because women are really frustrated. They're not getting the care they need, they're being dismissed. So that's kind of where my business has morphed since the last time that we talked, is it's me navigating that on a personal level and understanding that and wanting to help other women through what I already know from endo, from hormones, and now in this next stage of life.
Yeah, which is exactly why I wanted to have you on the show here because I know, so Molly and I talk all the time. Molly's one of
Yes.
actually, besides being a colleague and fellow functional nutritionist, Molly's actually a dear friend of mine as well. Even though we live on opposite ends of the country, we actually talk, definitely
Every day.
weekly, if not daily. And so I've been a front seat witness to everything that she's been experiencing along the way. And, it's an area that I'll say fortunately for the moment haven't quite gotten there yet in my life. And so I wanted to have somebody on here who can really speak from that personal experience. And, I know you've learned so much through your own personal journey and working with other clients who are on similar journeys. So I thought it could be such a powerful conversation to really hear about because you're so right. I mean, I had never even heard of perimenopause until I started getting into this functional nutrition journey myself, because of course, through my education and all of the things, it's certainly something that's come up along the way. But prior to that, just when I was in my prior career, I had never even heard of it. And so I'm sure had I not been in this world, it probably would have taken me by surprise, as it does so many people. And nobody really tells you what to do about it other than you kind of just suck it up and wait till you stop having a period, right? Which isn't great advice. So we're definitely going to dig into some better strategies today. That's why we're here. And we are also going to dig into kind of that connection between perimenopause and endo, how things can shift and change during that time as well. But before we get to that, why don't we start with just talking perimenopause in general? What actually is that? What does that mean? When should you start to be concerned about that happening in your own life? And what can that shift look like for women?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to say that we like talk every day pretty much.
Oh, all good.
Um, but yeah, so I was like, this is fun. This is just an extension of what we normally do.
Absolutely.
And we talk all things health and wellness anyway on a day-to-day basis because we love what we do. So thank you again for letting me come on and kind of share this, this whole perimenopause chapter. So what is perimenopause? It is really kind of that time before menopause, and menopause is when you stop having a period. So we're kind of going to go backwards, but perimenopause will end and like you will have your last period, and then from that point until a year later of no period whatsoever, then you are officially in menopause. So that kind of tells you the one end of it heading into menopause. But if we backtrack, perimenopause can really start in your mid 30s. You don't have to be in your 40s. It's different for everybody. It's even different. I don't care if your mom started when she was 45 and you're 32 or 37. It may be very different for you. Again, goes back to that bio individual approach that we talk
Mhm.
about a lot with functional health and functional nutrition. But you can start having symptoms. Again, that being said, let's say if you're in your mid 30s, you can have symptoms for 10 years and you may not even know what those are. So I get asked a lot, is there a test that I can take that shows me for sure I'm in perimenopause? And the honest answer to that is no. It's kind of like, is there one magic pill that's going to solve all your problems? No, I wish there was. But really, how we kind of, navigate perimenopause and we kind of diagnose it, quote unquote, is we want to really look at your symptoms first.
Mhm.
So what is your period looking like? Is it coming every month? Is it getting shorter? Is it getting longer? Are you having heavier periods? Which can be really tricky if you're someone that has endometriosis. Like we'll kind of talk about those nuances here in a minute, but just really starting to pay attention to your cycle and what is it doing? And are you still ovulating regularly? How are you sleeping? Are you waking up in the middle of the night? Are you waking up sweating? Hello, night sweats. Are you getting really moody, more so than normal? Do you feel like your anxiety is worse than it has been? Do you feel like your stress level is not quite right where it used to be? Like your stress tolerance drops significantly. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of symptoms. I could go on and on and on. I could probably talk for an hour about symptoms, but these are kind of some of the main things. A couple other ones are things that used to work, like workouts, exercise, certain things you ate don't work anymore. You can't lose weight. You can't self-regulate again with that stress tolerance. Things just feel off. That's kind of the best way to describe it in one big bubble is you just don't feel like yourself anymore and you literally will feel like you're going crazy. But it is this shift of our hormones starting to make these adjustments and you're not going crazy. Your body is truly chemically making all these changes. So things are going to start getting a little wonky. And that's only going to progress as you move through the stages of, I almost said progesterone, hello, as you move through the stages of perimenopause. And there are a few stages if you want me to talk about that.
Yeah, please
Go into
do.
that. So kind of that first stage of perimenopause, like I said, that can start anywhere mid 30s, early 30s. And really that's just where, like I said, you're kind of starting to notice my period is a little different. Things feel a little weird, but you're not going to notice really any huge differences. And like I said, that can go on for 10 years. You may have some weird things happening one month, maybe nothing the next month. Again, that can go on for a while. The second stage of that is where you're really going to start noticing some of those more drastic changes. So you kind of have like early perimenopause, middle menopause, sorry, early perimenopause, middle perimenopause. And that middle part is where you are going to start seeing like the night sweats. You're going to start seeing maybe your period now lasts like it comes on day 35 instead of day 28, or it's showing up on day 22 and you're like, what the heck's going on?
Mhm.
Or I just talked with a client the other day who thinks she might be in perimenopause and she's like, my period came 2 weeks early. What's wrong with me? I'm like, you're probably in kind of that middle stage of perimenopause. So that's really that middle stage is where we start seeing significant discrepancy, so to speak. And then that later stage is where we start seeing things like anovulatory cycles where you're missing ovulation. You may not be ovulating every month. And this is where things are really kind of starting to heat up and hormone levels are really starting to change and get a little more intense. So that's kind of three of the each stages. Obviously, the beginning being not a lot of changes, the end being a lot more significant changes, and then that middle kind of being a mixture of both, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. So
Yeah.
that way, I think it makes it easier for people to kind of gauge where you might be on that journey because, like you said, nobody tells you this is coming. And It can really take you by surprise if all of a sudden you notice, hey, why are my periods irregular when they used to be super regular my whole life and what's going on? So, yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
And I just want to add one thing that I thought of. That later stage of perimenopause can drag on for a while too. That can be 5 years, 7 years. Where I see a lot of women get tripped up is those periods start kind of skipping. And you,
Hmm.
again, those anovulatory cycles where you're not ovulating, but you're also not having a regular period every month.
Right.
And some women get really scared by that. And then some women get really excited because they're like, "Ooh, okay, here I come. I'm going to hit menopause. Like, I'm finally done with this." And then it comes back 6 months later. So, truly, that transition into menopause, you have to not have had a period for 12 months straight.
Right. To
And
actually be considered in
keep track of
menopause.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
really keep track of that. You are your best, advocate for yourself. Really pay attention to that. And like I said, if you don't have one for 4 months and then it comes back on month number 5, you're not in menopause yet. You got to kind of
Right.
start the clock back over and
Right.
go from there. So that can be really frustrating for a lot of women.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, I definitely want to, in today's conversation, dive into some of the things that you can do to support your body as you go through perimenopause, just for anybody who's in that phase of life. But because this is Endo Awareness Month, at least at the time this episode is going to air, I did want to focus a little bit on the interplay between endometriosis and perimenopause, because we know that while endo is primarily a full body inflammatory disease, it's very interconnected with the immune system. There's a lot of pieces there that we've talked about many times before on the podcast. But there is also definitely a hormonal component to it. Hormones do play a role in endo. And so it just is logical that as your body goes through these major hormonal shifts, that you might see some changes as far as endo symptoms and what kind of comes up on the endo journey that may look very different in, say, your 40s than did in your 20s or even your 30s. And so I would love if you can just speak to that. You can even share a little bit, of your personal
Yeah.
journey with that, because I know you've had some fun ups and downs. There's some
Oh,
fun new
yes.
symptoms coming up and all the things. But just what does that look like? How has going through perimenopause kind of changed your perspective on endo, or how has that shifted things for you along the way?
Well, that's a lot of really good questions, and I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share my personal experience. Again, if it helps somebody else, all the more, because like we said, no one really talks about this. And poor Alyssa has heard my string of crazy symptoms these last several months. Because I think I am definitely, full disclosure, I think I'm definitely towards that end, that third phase of perimenopause. I'm starting to have some of those anovulatory cycles. Periods are doing some weird things. I'm definitely noticing mood swings and more anxiety, and that stress tolerance is just not where it used to be. I forgot to share that bit. But yeah, really interesting having gone through endo, first of all, not knowing what the heck I was dealing with.
Yeah. Because
And
I'm just to interrupt
yeah.
really quickly. I know that for you on your personal journey, you actually hadn't been diagnosed with endo until much later in life, which is not terribly uncommon because we know getting a diagnosis can be challenging.
Mhm.
But for you, I feel like it was almost back to back. Like, okay, diagnosed with endo, now we're going into perimenopause. Like, we're just gonna slam all the things at you.
Yes. And my poor husband, full disclosure, my poor husband is like, oh my gosh, just like, what is going on with you? And I'm like, well, buckle up, buddy, because
Right.
we're
Oh,
just beginning
absolutely.
with the whole perimenopause and then menopause journey. Yeah, so having been diagnosed later in life with endo, I didn't realize a lot of my symptoms were endo related. I'm trying to think of like some of the main things I had. I always had really heavy periods, thought that was normal. I wouldn't say mine were debilitating. I just kind of rolled with it for long enough. I basically popped ibuprofen the first three or 4 days of my period, like it was candy. But I thought that was normal, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know any different. But heavy periods, not feeling the best. I didn't have any of the nausea. or anything like that, or like debilitating pain, but I didn't feel great. I had a lot of like sciatica pain and just major inflammation, and it was affecting everything. Like I said, it kind of affected my moods, anxiety, depression, you name it. It again, full body disease, right? Like it affected a lot of things. So having kind of gone through all that and then feeling great coming out of that and then opening the gate into this perimenopause journey, I was probably dealing with some perimenopause symptoms as I was navigating that. And to be honest, a lot of those symptoms kind of overlap. So that is probably why I didn't know that I was in those early stages of
Yeah.
perimenopause, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But kind of some of the things that I've noticed with my perimenopause journey is that I'm trying to think of the best way to word this to everybody is sometimes I do feel like my brain can kind of play tricks on me, and that some of
Mhm.
these perimenopause symptoms do kind of mimic some of those endo symptoms. And
Mm.
I have to really kind of put on my practitioner hat and focus and kind of walk myself through it. But there are some things that do kind of seem similar. You know, with these hormone changes we're talking about in perimenopause, you've got estrogen sometimes being really high, and then sometimes it's really low. So, you know, I used to have really tender breasts too, like the week before my period,
Yeah.
like painful. And so I've kind of there's been some cycles where I'm like, oh my goodness, my breast hurts so bad. But I just know that's when the estrogen is really high, which of course, having had endo, we're always concerned with that high estrogen.
Yeah.
But what we have to remember in perimenopause is we also have this low progesterone, and that those two kind of do this dance. So with those hormone levels kind of going up and down, it's really affecting our tissues, our ligaments,
Mm.
even like the way we move. Like I said, I had sciatica pain before. I was starting to get like some sciatica pain again, and I thought, oh my goodness. But I'm understanding as I navigate this, it's more so due to fluctuating hormone levels and those ligaments kind of, this makes me sound old and decrepit, but kind of like drying out. Those
Yeah.
ligaments are not as supple as they once were because we're starting to lose some estrogen. That progesterone is low. I feel like I'm not answering the question. I'm so sorry,
No,
but
you totally are.
I'm kind of seeing some overlaps with that. There can definitely be a little bit more inflammation in perimenopause, just again because things are changing in the body. So, really going kind of back to those foundational pieces of making sure that you are eating really good nutrient dense food and you are getting enough protein and you are really managing that blood sugar.
Yeah.
That is so important with endo. That is so important with perimenopause. Just really going back to those foundations, making sure you move your body every day. Again, with kind of the tightness and the ligament stuff that I'm noticing in perimenopause, if I don't move my body every day, I don't feel great when I get out of bed because everything's kind of tight.
Right.
So just kind of being aware of the things that your body is doing. And it doesn't mean that your body is broken, which I know we talk a lot about with endo. It just
Mhm.
means that you're kind of preparing for this next stage, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So again, I don't know. I hope I answered,
You did.
but I do see a lot of overlap with kind of some of those endo symptoms, but knowing enough to differentiate between that and what's really going on with the hormones and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So important to be aware of. And I love that you were talking about that, just that estrogen and progesterone balance, because I mean, really, that's a conversation that we have anywhere
Mhm.
you are along the endo journey, because the interplay of the hormones can absolutely impact just even the growth of endo lesions, can impact your cycles. I mean, there's so many things, but it's, relatively normal in the perimenopausal phase to have more fluctuations in the hormones. I remember even, I think I saw this from Dr. Laura Bryden, if I remember correctly, somewhere along my education here. She had this chart of basically what your hormones look like kind of through your whole lifetime as a woman. And it was so interesting to see it laid out like that. If I can find that picture again, I'll share it maybe on social media or something like that so people can see. But basically it shows, you have that puberty phase back when you're a little tween or teenager, and you can see all of the hormones just kind of going crazy. We all remember that phase, right? The one with all the acne and the mood changes, and gosh, don't don't miss that phase of life for sure. But definitely the hormones are kind of up and down at that point in time because your body's like just figuring out how to do this in the first place. And then if you look at that, from puberty up until perimenopause, yes, there's fluctuations with each individual cycle. But if you look at that picture as a whole for those many decades of life, it generally still looks pretty even, pretty stable ups and downs, at least for the average individual, right? And then you hit perimenopause and you see the
Like up
hormones
and
on
down,
that
up and down.
chart just going crazy up and down and upside down and everywhere. It was very eye-opening to see what that actually looks like when you look at that chart over an entire lifetime. Just kind of gives you a different perspective on that. So I thought that was really interesting, but definitely something to pay attention to for people who are starting to enter that phase of life, is just having an awareness that the hormones may shift and change, and that may impact, some of those endo symptoms. And, like you said, there's a lot of overlap there. But I know that that's something that you have worked on a lot for yourself. I know that's something that you help support clients with as well. So maybe we can start with that piece of it. Just
Yeah.
if you are noticing that you're starting to have more of these hormone fluctuations, or maybe you've even gone in and gotten some hormone levels checked or something, and you know that there's something a little different going on there. What are some of those initial steps that you would recommend to somebody who's in that phase of life and just trying to navigate that? Like, where do you even begin on supporting your body as you start to enter that phase of life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I just wanted to add, you said something about like puberty, how you're seeing like when you're talking about the hormone chart, perimenopause has actually been called the second puberty.
Yeah,
So yay, because your hormones are literally doing like what they did and when you were in puberty. They are all
right.
over the place and you feel crazy just like you did in puberty. So I just wanted to add that.
Lucky women, we get to go
Lucky
through this
women.
twice in life.
Yay. Yay.
Men
Um,
don't know how easy they have it, do
no,
they?
they don't. But let's see, what are some like basic things I usually work with my clients on? I do think that blood work is important, just again to kind of have a baseline and see kind of where everything is. I really think it's important to be checking your thyroid levels and see kind of what's going on with your thyroid. I know we've talked a little bit before, but I use HTMA testing in my practice, which is hair tissue mineral analysis, which is incredible, especially for women in general, anybody in general, but especially for women in midlife, because it's truly showing us. We test with a sample of your hair, so it's not blood, it's not urine, but it's 10 times more accurate than what we see in the blood because we're testing what's in the tissues of your body. And it's so important when we're looking at thyroid health in midlife because you can have a normal thyroid blood test and that be normal, quote unquote, right? I have many clients come to me and say, my blood work was normal, but I still feel horrible. Like, why am I
Yeah.
having all these symptoms? Like, nothing makes sense. What's going on with me? Am I dying? What's going on? And we run the HTMA test on them, and that actually looks and sees if that thyroid hormone is truly getting into the cell. So, yes, nothing's wrong with that blood work. It's showing that there's enough thyroid hormone in the blood. But the HTMA, because we're looking at tissues, is showing us that most oftentimes that thyroid hormone is not getting into the cell to be utilized. And
Mm,
that's why these women are like, sluggish or like they can't lose weight and they feel off and their hair may be falling out more or dry or brittle or their skin is crazy because their thyroid is really like it's not being utilized properly. So that's a really important test that I like to run to really see that. Again, really looking and seeing those foundations again, like we talked about nutrition. That is so important. Really, truly make sure you're eating 3 meals a day.
Mhm.
Like you can just kind of start with those basics. If things feel off, always, I know like you and I say, just eat real food.
Mhm.
Just go back and eat real food. That will really help stabilize your hormones, your body, kind of get everything back on track. Again, that blood sugar balance is really important. Sugar really does a number on you in perimenopause.
Yeah.
Really try to limit sugar and alcohol. You don't feel good in perimenopause when you have alcohol. As we know from navigating endo, it is highly, highly inflammatory. Your body just doesn't do well with alcohol, period. Really try to avoid that. That will cut out 90% of your symptoms that you're having. Making sure you're getting enough sleep. Sleep is so important. Again, we're talking about sleep being disrupted, but really making sure you get enough sleep. Most women aren't getting enough sleep. Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking 8 to 9 hours, which seems excessive, but your body needs that so that it can kind of repair and detox. Again, talking about that movement piece, making sure you're moving your body, doing some strength training. Things, again, that worked in your 20s are not going to be working as you're navigating perimenopause. No HIIT workouts, no crazy cardio at the gym. Like you really need to be supporting your body in a more gentle, supportive way. Again, so that you can keep those hormones balanced. You can keep your muscle tone up, bone density. We start talking a lot about things like that. And then really managing that stress, really trying to get a handle on that. Those are some of the things I would start recommending if you're starting to notice any symptoms. Again, there's not one thing to do, but
Yeah.
starting with some basic blood work, if you know someone that can do the HTMA testing, I highly recommend that. And then starting with those basic foundations. Those are
Mhm.
those are going to be your basic tools in your tool belt that you can start implementing right away. I mean, you can listen to this and go have a healthy meal with good protein and healthy fats and carbs. That's something you can do right away. And make sure you get enough sleep at night. You can do that today.
Absolutely. And I love the way that you're taking that holistic approach, which is, oh, it's not just, hey, eat this food or don't eat this food and everything will just be perfect again, but it's a little bit of everything, right? It's the diet, it's the sleep, it's the movement, it's fine tuning how to make this all work for you right now. And I love also how you're talking about how what worked for you 10 years ago, 20 years ago is probably not going to be the same things that are going to help to support you at this point in your journey. I think that's so, so important to be aware of is that there are a lot of shifts and changes happening in your body. And so, along with that, it's about learning to really listen to that and figure out what's going to now work for this particular phase of life. Now, I know that you and I, of course, we're just nutrition nerds over here. We have so many conversations about all of this
Yes,
stuff.
guilty.
And this is why we love talking all the time
Yes,
because, we can nerd out with each other on things
right.
that most people get very tired of hearing about very quickly. Our poor husbands are so patient with us. Um, but I would love if you can kind of touch on some of those common mistakes that you see women make as they get into this perimenopausal phase. Because I know there's so many myths out there and so many, different ideas that come into play that women think that they're making choices that are really healthy for their bodies. They think that they're really taking care of themselves, but actually maybe doing things that are, making this phase of life more challenging again, especially with endo. I think that's one of the key points here for today is that, as you shift into that perimenopausal phase, that, if you have endo, you might even need to be extra aware of some of this stuff that other women may not have as many, struggles with or may not need to be quite as aware of. But for my lovely endo ladies out there, especially, just what are some of those common mistakes that you see women make that you're helping people with on a regular basis, and helping them to really see shifts and changes in their bodies just by making some fairly simple, dietary and lifestyle changes.
Yeah, I see I see a lot of those mistakes. So I'm happy to like bust some myths
Yeah.
right here and right now. I think a couple of the biggest ones I see are so many women come to me and they're trying this intermittent fasting
Yes.
because I mean, thank goodness we live in this day and age where there was so much information out there, but it's almost information overload. And so many of us try to DIY our own health, right? Like that's how I started with my own health journey. But it can be too much, and it is more of a one size fits all approach. And that's not what we do when we look at functional health and functional nutrition. So a lot of women are trying to do this intermittent fasting, and what they're basically doing is starving themselves. They're not getting enough food. And that's kind of the common misconception is that, well, if I eat more food, I'm going to get more, like I'm going to get fat and I'm going to put on more weight and I can't lose this weight. I'm already carrying around like my midsection and my hips. I certainly don't want to add to that. Like, no way, no, thank you. But it's actually the opposite of that. You actually, again, in that kind of midlife range, you need more protein. You need those healthy fats. You need healthy carbs. Like you actually need more of that and you need more food. Again, I have so many women that come to me and they're not eating enough and they're
Yeah.
hungry all the time.
Yeah.
And as we know, that's, again, from endo stuff, that's blood sugar instability, that's insulin resistance, that causes more inflammation. Like it's just kind of setting you up not for success. So those are kind of some of the big things I see. And also, I'll add to that women being really afraid of animal protein.
Mm-hmm.
So many women say, I don't want to eat red meat because, and this kind of maybe an offshoot we may not want to talk about, but it's going to give me higher cholesterol and I'm going to have to go on a statin. And cholesterol does tend to go higher when we are in perimenopause and menopause. So women are really cautious against that. Or if I eat more red meat, it's going to give me heart disease, or, these things that we start thinking about as we get more mature in life. And all of that is just one big myth that needs to be busted. You need that animal protein to really stabilize those hormones, to make your body run properly. To lose that excess weight, you need to be eating more. So those are kind of some of the big things I see. I recently did a group challenge, like a 21-day group challenge, and we talked a lot about nutrition and some of these foundational pieces for midlife. And one of the women said, I wake up every night at 3 o'clock in the morning and I am pacing my house and I can't go back to sleep. And I said, okay, let's try one small thing that you can implement tonight. I want you to make sure you eat dinner, because she wasn't eating dinner
Mm-hmm.
at all, because she was of the mindset that if I eat dinner, that's too late in the day
Mm-hmm.
and I can't go to bed and have all that food in my belly.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, let's just start with something small, like some protein, some apple slices. So she did like turkey slices, a couple pieces of apple, and like a couple pieces of cheese. That first night, she slept through the night. And she was blown away. And I was like, it's that simple. Like,
Mm-hmm.
give your body some nutrients and some nourishment, and those things will start to balance out. And she's like, I'm sleeping through the night now. Oh my gosh. So I think, again, those are some of the biggest things I see: the intermittent fasting, the not wanting to eat enough protein, not eating enough in general,
Yeah.
really is doing your body more harm than good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love how simple that is.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And it seems so, when you hear it, it seems so, I don't know. I want to use the word basic. We use the word foundational, but
Yeah.
I think in the best possible way, because at the end of the day, I know many, many women who do think that way. And I love that you're even talking about, because I know that's one of the common things that starts to come up in perimenopause is that weight gain, that it becomes harder to lose weight and all of the things. But I love what you said about how sometimes that happens because you're not getting enough food. Like your body, basically what happens is your body thinks that it's starving. Like it's your body's saying, oh, wow, I'm not really getting enough food. So I better hold on to what I have here.
Exactly.
And so that can end up with you having more weight gain instead of less. I know it may seem counterintuitive to eat more food if you've been gaining weight lately, but I know I've seen this in my practice, and I know you have as well, where, we've encouraged women to like, yeah, you need to actually eat more. And when they really do that and implement it, lo and behold, they actually lose weight and are completely shocked every time.
And also get more energy and
Yes,
feel better. Like it's a win for
a
them.
hundred
Like once they
percent.
do it, they're like, oh my goodness.
Yes. And this completely ties back into that endo conversation too, because honestly, so much of this is the same conversations I would have with a woman with endo at any age. You were talking about the blood sugar piece of
Mhm.
it is super, super important. I know that's, especially when it comes to hormone health, super, super key. I mean, there's so many little things like that you really truly you can start doing that right now today. And I think that is so powerful to be aware of. So thank you for for sharing all of that. Another piece that I wanted to kind of circle back to, you were talking earlier about the HTMA, the hair trace mineral analysis test that you use, which I know you're very passionate about. Truly, you can get so much information out of that test. It's different than you get from, your conventional blood work and things like that. But I would love if you can circle back a little bit to just minerals, why they're so important, what kind of, I know you talked about the thyroid a little bit, which was super interesting, but just kind of in general, what are some of the common patterns that you're seeing for people, and how you can use minerals to help to support that, which I think is so cool because it's so simple, right? Some of the work we do as functional nutritionists can get more complex. Like there's a lot of moving parts and pieces with so many things, but there's so much that you can support with nutrients, right? We talked about the food piece of it, which, is where you're going to get a lot of vitamins and minerals and proteins and healthy fats and all the things you mentioned, but really targeting in on the mineral piece, I know can be really powerful as well. That's something that you talk about a lot. So I would love if you can share a little bit more about that.
So I think, like you said, minerals, I feel like they get forgotten.
Yeah.
Sorry for the minerals. They get like shoved in the corner, but minerals are literally like the spark plugs of our body, and they are responsible for over something ridiculous, like over 300,000 different like enzymatic processes without like totally geeking out. It's something crazy like that. It's a lot. We'll just say that. But minerals are really important. So let's just kind of first say what are minerals? Like it's okay. We can address that. Minerals are calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. That also encompasses heavy metals like copper, lead, mercury. So when we're talking minerals, we're kind of looking at how these minerals work with everything else in your body. You're right. We're getting minerals from the food we eat. We used to get minerals from our soil. Our soil is so depleted, we don't really
Yeah.
have that option anymore. But when we are talking about whether it's someone dealing with endo or someone in perimenopause or even menopause, minerals are key because they are showing us how our body is burning through these minerals and using them for everything that our body is doing. They are literally tied to everything. So what I really look at with this test, which is so helpful, is we're looking at kind of those first four minerals that I mentioned: calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. Why is calcium important, and what are some of those trends that I see? Calcium, hello, that's tied to our bones, especially as we talk about perimenopause, menopause, osteoporosis. These are things we're thinking about down the road. We always want to be thinking preventative, right? What I can see a lot, kind of what I see a pattern of in my, excuse me, in my testing is that a lot of women come to me with extremely high calcium,
Mm.
which does not necessarily mean that you are doing great. Like your bones are great, they're super strong. It's kind of nuanced, but what we see a lot of is called a calcium shell. And this actually means that you have a lot of biounavailable calcium in your body. So it's kind of like floating around in your body and it's not being used properly.
Right.
So this can show up with like achy joints. Anything, think of calcium as hard, like it's bone, right? If you have achy joints, if maybe again, some fatigue could be like that high calcium, but a calcium shell basically means your body is so stressed out that your body has basically built this protective shell to keep it safe. Like we were talking about not losing weight because the body doesn't feel safe. A calcium shell is a protective way your body is trying to keep you safe from stress. You are extremely stressed. You have high calcium. It's biounavailable. Excuse me. Another trend I see when we look at magnesium is always low, meaning it shows up very high on an HTMA test. Again, it's biounavailable. When we are stressed, we burn through those first four minerals first and foremost. They're gone like that. Everyone is deficient in magnesium this day and age. Magnesium is like the chill pill. So when you feel extra stressed and you don't have enough magnesium, that's where you're going to feel it. Sodium, I see a lot of low sodium. Again, when we're stressed, we burn through this. Women are chronically stressed. I don't care what stage of life you're in, but we are the queens of multitasking. When you are chronically stressed for so long, your adrenals are really struggling. Mm-hmm. So really low sodium means you're just burning through that stress. Yeah. Low potassium, I see a lot of too. And that goes back to kind of that thyroid piece of it is you need potassium and enough of it to make sure that the thyroid hormone is getting into the cell. So that's a lot of what I see kind of trending on this test with women in midlife. We also look at a lot of heavy metals. Copper is definitely considered a heavy metal. And one of the biggest things I see is that women come to me in midlife and they may have, going back to kind of the endo thing, they have a lot of estrogen dominant symptoms, or they have these heavy periods and they don't know what's going on, why they're having them. We look at their copper, and copper can be low, which again means it's biounavailable. If you have ever been on any type of hormonal birth control, that really messes with the copper in your body. And I don't care if you were on birth control in your 20s, it will stay in your body for up to 30 years. Wow. And it's going to really mess with those hormone levels, the probably lower progesterone, higher estrogen. And we are going to see that in that, we call it copper imbalance. So again, looking at big picture, most women that come to me have a lot of copper imbalance. And it's contributing to a lot of the fibroids, endo, again, kind of those high estrogen dominant symptoms is what we see a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting how much these tiny little minerals can influence so many things in your body. That's so fascinating.
And I forgot to add cobalt. Cobalt is one that I forget to mention. It's not one of those first four main ones, but cobalt, I see a lot of low cobalt. Cobalt is a very important mineral to see what is going on with your stomach acid. Kind of going back again to those foundational pieces. You got to make sure your stomach acid is working properly to be digesting and absorbing nutrients. So if you have low stomach acid, we got to go back and look at your digestion first. True. Right?
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, one of the things we both talk about is that it's not even, you are what you eat, it's you are what you can absorb. Right? Because you can be eating all the protein, but if your body isn't actually absorbing it well, you might actually still not be getting enough protein. So it's all the pieces, right? So many little things. So awesome. Well, I definitely could talk to you all day. In fact, I often do. But in the interest of being respectful of your time and everybody, all my listeners as well, I think that we've touched on so many fantastic points today, but is there any other last little things that are popping into your mind that you really would love to share that we haven't quite talked about today?
There is actually, and I was kind of hoping you'd give me a moment because I was like, oh, I really want to address this before we hop off because it's very important and I get asked this all the time.
Okay.
Because we're talking kind of about endo awareness and hormones and definitely estrogen, I think anyone that's dealt with endo is afraid of estrogen. We don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But when we're talking about perimenopause and menopause, that whole hormone conversation comes up with hormone replacement therapy. So I get asked a lot my thoughts and feelings on that. And so I just want to give a short
Yeah, it's a great topic.
overview of that because it's very important when you are someone that has dealt with endo, and you have to be really, really careful. And again, I can't say it enough, bio individual.
Yeah.
What works for someone else may not work for you. I don't care if your neighbor next door and your best friend are on an estrogen patch and something else, it may not work for you. So you really have to listen to your body and understand your body. But that being said, I think hormone replacement therapy is great, but, and there's a big but, address your foundations first and
Mm,
foremost. You need to make sure that you are eating enough food, that your blood sugar is balanced, that your stress is in check before you try any type of hormone replacement therapy, because what can happen is it can kind of blow up in your face. And if you go right to hormone replacement therapy without those foundations in place first, you can really exacerbate your symptoms.
yeah.
So really be mindful of that and get those foundations in place first. And then definitely start looking at some great options. Again, if you're someone that's dealt with endo, progesterone is a game changer.
Yeah.
It's really, really helpful. Again, it calms you down, it chills you out. Estrogen, be kind of mindful of that. They're all different types. Really find someone that can help you navigate that, whether it's a functional practitioner or someone specifically trained in hormone replacement therapy. And then, testosterone is kind of later on as you like get postmenopause. But I just wanted to speak on that piece of the hormone replacement therapy. Always try to do bio unavailable if possible. Again, it's going to be more natural and work better with your body. But I just thought that was a really important piece when with us talking about endo.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of it, but just really educate yourself and be aware of it and know your options, because when your body stops making certain hormones, it's not like it's going to make more.
Right.
When you're done,
Absolutely.
they're done.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you talked about that because I hadn't even thought to bring that up. That's why you're here too, because you're very highly aware of some of these things that can come up. But I think it is such an important conversation to have because as much as you and I love to focus on the foundational pieces and supporting your body holistically and all the things. I know that the bioidentical hormones can be really powerful for people as an additional tool because you're right, as that's really what happens during that phase as you shift, especially, that last shift from perimenopause into menopause, is that your hormones, like, they don't completely disappear from your body, but they're quite a bit lower from what they were during your cycling years, and that can really affect so many things in your body, how you feel, even things like your bone density. I know you mentioned that earlier, your sleep, your mood, your energy. I mean, there's so many things which I think in part tells us how important our hormones are, but also, it's okay if you need that support as you go through that phase of life. I know many people who have taken a dive into the bioidentical hormones and felt so much better when having that additional support. But exactly what you said, just be sure to work with somebody who really understands this stuff and can help you to navigate what you really need rather than just kind of a generic dosage.
Like you said, please don't be ashamed. Like,
Yeah,
I think if anything, if you're an endo warrior, like really advocate for yourself and don't be ashamed. Ask for help and
yeah,
say like, hey, I may be starting to have some of these symptoms. I need help. Like, this is what I'm experiencing. How can this help me? So don't be afraid to ask for that and advocate for yourself
yeah,
always.
absolutely. Always, always, always. That's
Always.
forever. Well, thank you, Molly. This has been just such a fantastic conversation. I'm so happy that I, was able to get you back on the podcast here to share everything you've learned, everything that you've been navigating. I think this is going to be so helpful for people and such a powerful conversation. And of course, after hearing this, I'm sure people are going to want to find you and connect with you and reach out to you. So I would love if you can just share what are the best places to find you.
Yeah. If you want a dose of perimenopause with a side of humor, please come follow me on Instagram. I do try to post there quite frequently, but I share a lot of education on there. So I'm trying to remember what our Instagram handle is. I think it's at Good For You FD.
Yes.
Good for you. I'm sure you'll put this in the notes.
Absolutely.
And then I do have a website that's www.goodforyoufood.net. And those are kind of the two main places to find me. Like I said, I'm pretty active on social media. I really enjoy connecting with people there and giving you a little dose of humor. So
Perfect.
come follow along with me there.
Love it. And we will link to that in the show notes as well. So you can all find those links easily. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on here today, taking time out of your day to chat with me and be on the podcast and share all of your valuable knowledge with everybody. I know that's going to be so helpful for people who are in that phase of life and just feeling a little lost and stuck. So I truly appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate it too.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much to everybody for listening in today and wishing you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning in to Aligned to Rise. If this episode spoke to you, take a moment to share it with a friend who needs this message too. And then don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'll see you next time, my friend. Let's rise together.